If you're around 60 years old and most of your retirement savings are in pre-tax accounts like 401ks, IRAs, TSPs, anything with a 4 in the beginning, this video is for you. Here's the truth. Most people don't realize until it's way too late is that pre-tax wealth feels good as we see our accounts amassing and growing each and every year, but it quietly becomes the biggest disruptor in our retirement forecasting plan. Today, we're going to walk through a lot of those different misunderstood identities, misunderstood motifs, and how to evaluate each and every situation and why doing nothing creates the most unnecessary problem. How disciplined planning, in fact, may help you take back control and beyond. My name is Nic McLeod. I'm the founder of NJM Wealth Preservation Strategies. For 2 decades, we've helped families across this country make informed and powerful retirement decisions, especially around income planning, tax awareness, and long-term safety and security. After all, a portfolio is a lot more than just a mishmash of different types of investments and tools. What's more important is how it works for you, your risk tolerance, your goals and needs. We hear all the time that I did everything right, but almost all my money is in pre-tax. One of the most common situations we run into day in and day out is meeting people that, checked every box. They did everything right. They paid down their debt. They saved every penny that they could with their 401k or qualified programs, but it's all pre-tax money. And let me walk you through what this means. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've made a mistake, but there's some very key components here that we have to make sure are buttoned up before we hit age 73, or for you younger people, 75. So the real problem with all pre-tax, let's kind of open this can of worms here. Most people don't choose to be all pre-tax. It happens naturally. We have employer-sponsored plans. We have tax deductions offered from creating our own IRA accounts, our SEP IRAs if you're self-employed, or just a simple IRA, things that you're adding to on your own. Years and years of disciplined saving compounded with heavy and also often induced market interest rates amass dollars quickly. But see, most retirees don't fully see that until they're in their 70s or right before. Every single dollar amassed in traditional IRA or 401k is fully taxable. It's forced out later through required minimum distributions. This is counted against Medicare premiums, and it's included in Social Security planning, which becomes taxable. So even if you don't need the money, and I find that most people don't, the IRS eventually decides when they're going to take that money, and it doesn't get lower as you age, folks. It gets higher. That's when taxes, or IRMA, which is Medicare Part B and D premium surcharges, become at the peak interest of how to protect ourselves. So what I'm saying in short is most people enter into their 60s thinking, I've checked all my boxes. I got my house paid off. I got all of our other debts taken care of. We've got enough money to sustain us the rest of our lives. And then they realize, maybe I don't need the monthly income that I used to need. When we had all these bills and we had all this debt, we had 3 or 4 kids that we were raising. So once our income goes to nothing, that's one thing. But the second question is, what are our actual real-time expenses? Do you live in a part of the country or wherever you are in the world that has a high cost of living? Is it medium? Is it low? What does inflation look like now? And based on the last 10 years, do we expect the cost of living to stay the same at that same basal rate, which was about 35% in America over the last 7 to 10 years? Or will it be more or less? You see, once we get to the point where we can clearly identify what our average rate of return is, you can then look at your portfolio, all that pre-tax money, and come up with a roundabout number that will tell you where it will be at age 73 or age 75. And then you can determine or hypothesize what your RMDs will be over the course of the next 10 years if you were 73. So if you've got $1 million today, suppose you have $2 million at 73, what will your RMD be? If you don't need that required minimum distribution to live on, to pay taxes, to travel, to pay for expenses, supplement your retirement, that's going to be a tax bomb sitting in your lap. Why? because it starts off at 3.77%. And by the time you're 90 years old, you're pulling out almost 10% based on your RMD factors and calculations at that time. So if your portfolio continues to grow and you're outpacing what you're taking out from your RMD, which most people are, even if you're just in a basic S&P 500 fund or an average mutual fund, you're going to be in a world of hurt in terms of tax pain if you're one of those people that believe taxes will only go up from here, be it that we're in the lowest tax environment that we've ever seen. So that is the reason pre-tax money becomes a top mind awareness for people in their early to mid 60s. How do I avoid the RMD tax bomb? How do I put myself in the best taxable position later on? And how do my wife or my husband and my heirs receive these dollars in the most tax advantageous way? More to come. Now let's go over some key components here, some very common things that happen. When I say things, I'm not saying that they're mistakes, because they don't have to be mistakes, but these are some common things that kind of crop up if we don't take care of this tax bomb situation. So number one, we walk into a retirement situation where our income levels drop when we stop working. That's obvious. Everything feels quite manageable in our early 60s. Also pretty obvious. And then RMDs begin. So we just leapfrogged about 10 to 15 years here. Add Social Security layers, and for you pensioners, pension money on top of that. And all of a sudden, your Medicare premiums skyrocket overnight. Tax brackets fill faster than before, even with standard deduction. And then you're realizing exactly what you should have been paying attention to 10 years prior, which is, how do I get some of this pre-tax money over into the Roth category, which means you're not taxed on those dollars. You're in control of those dollars moving forward. So you see, prior proper planning, having a plan in place. And even for those of you that don't necessarily need to convert to Roth, I think you need to understand the need so that you can determine for yourself whether or not that's something you want to do or not. I've found in my 20-year career that in the last 5 years, most advisors that used to say no to Roth conversions are having to say yes because their clients are now more educated and intelligent than they are. That's the harsh truth. Most financial advisors and firms don't have the softwares, the templates, and the infrastructure to even begin a proper analysis on whether Roth conversion would be good for you, much less affordable and sustainable. So before you get yourself into the weeds or overpay to convert, a full analysis that tells you what type of future potential tax pain you'd actually be looking at, and then compare that to how much the cost of real conversion is. Think about it. If you're not paying the same level of taxes over the first 15 years of taking RMD, so say 73 to 88, if it's less expensive to just pay taxes on your RMD or utilize QCDs, and there's a lot of other advanced techniques, versus paying in the tax bracket you are today and beyond to convert. If it's more expensive to convert, why would you convert? Now, I would think that if maybe your goal was a tax-free inheritance, that would be one reason, but there's other ways to kind of prop up the portfolio and really add trusts, specific types of trusts to the whole motif in portfolio design and estate planning that could also be of benefit to you versus traditional Roth conversion planning. And then I've met with people, roughly about 200 people a year for the last 5 years. That's 1,000 people. That Roth conversion was a no-brainer. It's something that they felt like they had to do, not something that they needed to do. If you're still in your early 60s, late 50s, early 60s to mid 60s, this is the most critical window because you still have time to plan. Being disciplined here is what matters the most. Having a plan built for you is what matters the most. For many households, the years between retirement and RMD represent a lower income window, especially before you turn on Social Security, if you can afford to do that. That window is oftentimes used by our team of experts to evaluate the Roth conversion scenarios. We usually provide 3 to 4 Roth conversion scenarios. How to manage the tax brackets intentionally, also how to reduce future required minimum distributions, and improve long-term after-tax efficiency. We also build portfolios specifically for our clients to help them afford the cost of conversion without depleting principal. Our quantum system shows people how to do that in numerous ways without muddying the waters, keeping in line with their goals and their risk tolerance. Not everybody wants to have 100% of their money in equities, and not everybody wants to have 100% of their money in bank CDs, treasuries, and annuities. So we have to make sure that we're building a portfolio design, not only in line with that person's goals, the tax efficiency motifs, Roth conversions, whatever that person needs to accomplish those goals, but the portfolio design as a whole and diversification strategy has to mirror what that person's comfortability is and what they prefer. We've got a quick pause for just a second. If this is resonating with you so far, you're realizing how much of your retirement is tied up in pre-tax accounts, and that you might not need that money later on, and you don't want to cause yourself unnecessary tax pain. This is exactly what NJM Wealth Preservation Strategies does. We help individuals just like you evaluate your accounts, run an analysis, a tax planning, timing. How does that all fit together? And putting that together with your identity and your thumbprint is what our quantum system is built to do. There's no pressure here. It's just a chance for us to walk through your situation and understand what your options are more clearly laid out in front of you. You can click the links below and find a link to our website, our weekly webinar, to make sure that you stay up to date on these topics in specific. We talk about everything covered in this video every single week, Tuesday night at 7 p.m. on our live, non-scripted webinar with about 100 to 200 people just like you signing on each and every week for the last 5.5 years now. So let us know if you'd be interested in participating in our quantum portfolio analytics overview. And that covers the 4 pillars of retirement: income planning and strategic income planning, tax efficiency and Roth conversions, how to avoid RMDs and tax bombs down the line, a portfolio design built to accomplish pillar 1 and 2, and then estate planning pieces and extra accoutrements to help just kind of polish off the plan and make sure you're airtight, soup to nuts. Now, a lot of people might say, well, I don't need income, Nick. Well, if you're going to convert to Roth, you do, unless you want to start capsizing what your IRAs look like by taking chunks of pre-tax money to hand to the IRS. And then all you're doing is decapitating your portfolio. We don't want you to do that. We're known nationwide here in America of showing people how to take their dollars, put them to work, and grow their accounts while they convert to Roth over time. Now that's something. Let's look at how a lot of people, we think about Roth conversions in this whole process from getting from pre-tax to a tax-efficient, tax-free model. From tax deferred, we know that we've got to every penny we take out is taxed at ordinary income. To be tax-free, we pay those taxes now. Now that has to do with what tax bracket you're in, all your income sources, standard deduction, etc. So we don't really ask, should you do Roth conversions? What we ask is, at what income level are you? In which years will we be at these levels? How does that impact Medicare? Does that affect Social Security taxation? Making sure that all of these things are in line allows us to more accurately depict what Roth conversions could look like without affecting other sections of your retirement planning. Also, what does it mean for your spouse later? If the goal isn't avoiding taxes entirely, what is the goal? How are we looking to serve others or ourselves or both? The goal for most people is managing all of these things over time and built for you. In section 5, we're going to talk about the cash flow reality. So oftentimes what happens here is more income doesn't necessarily mean more freedom. More income can mean that we're paying unnecessary taxes on all other sources of income. IRMA, Social Security is taxed at the full extent. Excess RMDs, in fact, do this for most people that don't need those RMDs to float their lifestyle. So large distributions push us into higher tax brackets, period. Unused income still gets taxed. Now you can reinvest that. But most planning focuses on coordination, not just account balances. So we've got to make sure that we're kind of in line with one another. In certain situations, retiring earlier can help. That, of course, depends on a lot of key factors, but to keep it tight today, we're talking about creating room for tax planning, allowing flexibility before RMDs, and reducing long-term tax exposure. It doesn't necessarily mean everyone should retire early, but it does mean that timing matters just as much as your account totals. So a couple of things that I want to hit on before we move on to section 7 is what I'm talking about here is sometimes I meet with people in their late 50s to mid 60s that like their job. They're happy doing what they're doing. In fact, they feel good, they look good, and that's not any of the problem. The problem is they've got huge amounts, 3, 4, 5, some of them 7, 8 million in pre-tax accounts between the spouse. And what this is doing is they're getting older, so they lack the time to properly get a large portion of that converted. Do you imagine your first RMD being $370 to $500,000? There's people out there that their first RMD combined, husband and wife, is over $300,000 and sometimes over $400,000. And remember, it doesn't get lower each year. It grows each year. Each year you age, based on your fair market value, that's the value of all of your pre-tax accounts and whatever you're earning in those subsequent investment vehicles. And the factor of your life expectancy factor, which I like to calculate to a percentage, grows each and every year, almost by a factor of 1. So beware, if you eat up all of your time that you should be converting by continuing to make income that you don't necessarily need, that could put you in a pickle. And then you're going to have to live with the fact that I was making a lot of money and I didn't want to sacrifice that. But now at a time in my life where tax efficiency should mean the most, in the last 15 to 20 years of my life, I'm paying more taxes than I did when I was working. That could be a problem. So let's go over a couple of our big takeaways before we wrap up today. Number 1, you're not alone. Most people have not done the planning. Sometimes it's paralysis analysis. They're not taking all this info in and dealing with it in a very healthy manner. So you're not alone in that. But we do need a plan. Not having a plan is the biggest issue that most people encounter. Because then we're shuffling papers at 68, 69, 70 years old, realizing there's no way I can get this converted unless I'm converting massive amounts of dollars in the 37% tax bracket, and I'm cannibalizing large portions of my portfolio. And at that point, it doesn't really matter. So prior proper planning, folks, please help our team do the best they can do for you by using our fill out forms ahead of time before we engage in our quantum portfolio analytic process. So whether Roth conversions make sense for you or not, how does your tax picture evolve? What does that look like for you? Coordinating your income, taxes, timing, and investments takes a team of people. I truly believe that. And using the link below will allow you to begin the process with NJM and participating in the quantum analytics process. It takes us between 36 and 72 hours to complete this after we have a one-on-one Zoom review with you to get to know you a little bit better. And always remember, you can make more money in life, but you can't make more time. And if you're thinking about tax efficiency and Roth conversion, we need some time and we need a plan. Thank you for watching. Check the links below. Check out our website and our weekly webinars on similar topics every single week, Tuesday nights, 7 o'clock Central Time here in the United States. God bless.